everyone, welcome to the Miss Texas Show, where we showcase life in Texas and other places and highlight our amazing survivors of traumatic events, family violence, sex trafficking, sexual abuse, and community leaders to share the community resources. Under our segment of military time, we invite our military and veterans who would like to share with us their experiences during and after their military service. We run this segment in partnership with the National Veterans Chamber of Commerce, and we would like to invite those who have overcome traumatic events and would like to share and are now ready to help others. We also have another segment called Beauty for Ashes, and under this segment, we invite our fellow pageant sisters that includes winners as well as nominees, and actors, musicians, dancers, but last but not least, ambassadors and advocates for the cause, and come here to share with our audience their lives and the impacts that they have made. Our show runs twice a month, and if you would like to be a guest on the show, you can reach us by email at msusatexas@gmail.com. It's msusatexas. Or you can also contact us on Facebook with the same handle name, Miss USA Texas, MSUSA Texas. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our special guest today, Mr. Robert Canada. Robert has been with us in the past, and we have discussed about the Boy Scouts of America claim. So today we are so excited to have him again to give us a quick update. And as you might already know, that on February the 18th this year, the Boy Scout has filed a bankruptcy in Delaware. And there has been so many lawsuits against them, and in the past, in some, by the news media, they have data about 7,800 of the former leaders from Boy Scout that has sexually assaulted about 12,000 children in the over past 72 years. And this talk today is going to talk about the claim that's regarding that matter, which please keep in mind the important deadline is coming up very soon, November the 16th of this year at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So now let's talk about Mr. Canada a little bit about what he does. Mr. Canada is an associate attorney at Gregory J. Canada and Associate LLP, and he is a personal injury attorney based in New York City. Among his clients, including children and adults survivors of sexual abuse that occurred while in foster care, the Boy Scouts, educational settings, and while religious activities. Prior to joining the firm, Mr. Canada spent over 7 years serving as an assistant district attorney in the New York County DA's office, where he tried over a dozen of cases to verdict and developed keen trial skills. His first 5 years in the office were in the trial division, where he prosecuted various felony offenses such as domestic violence, robbery, assault, weapons, narcotics, etc. After working in the trial division, Mr. Canada joined the prestigious Public Corruption Unit, where he has investigated and prosecuted complex corruption amongst the NYPD officers and other uniformed public servants, public employees, elected officials, etc. Since leaving the office, Mr. Canada has joined the Trial Advocacy Program faculty, where he helps train first-year prosecutors on trial techniques and strategies. So he has made so many contributions to the community, and thank you for what you do, Mr. Canada, and thank you for being on the show. And now let's give our hands and welcome our special guest, Mr. Canada.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. We had such a great show the first time it was a no-brainer for me. So thank you very much for everything that you do, and also thank you again for having me back. So, I'd like to talk about, before we really kind of jump into the updates, I want to highlight the most important thing first. And the one takeaway from this call is the deadline to file a claim. November 16th, 2020, at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. November 16th, 2020, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is the day and time that all claims for sexual abuse involving the Boy Scouts must be received by the court. Okay, you can't send it out on that day. It has to be received by them. All right, now that's the most important thing, and I can't stress that enough because that date is rapidly approaching. It's October 15th right now. That's going. November 16th is going to be here in just a month. And keep in mind, it takes time to complete these claims. So, attorneys like myself, we're very busy right now. We're normally busy people, but we're exceptionally busy now because a lot of people, as is human nature to do it, is people can wait until the last minute to file things and to reach out to lawyers to do things. And so I anticipate that there's going to be in the next month just a flood of claims that are filed. And so you don't want to be reaching out to an attorney for the first time in 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now, because the reality is that there may not be an attorney who's available to do it. The time to reach out to someone to do this, if you're even remotely thinking about it, is now. Just with really any attorney you call, I mean, you're not obligating yourself to do anything. We take plenty of phone calls where people talk and they just want to know what's going on. They want to know what their rights are, and after the conversation, they say, you know what, I don't think I want to do this, and that's fine. You're not wasting my time. You're not wasting another attorney's time. You're not wasting anyone's time. If it's important to you, then it's a good use of time. And so, I would encourage anyone who's listening who's even on the fence and thinking about it, make that phone call now. Don't wait, because if you wait, it might be too late, and then your ability to receive compensation is gone forever. Okay, so with that out of the way, November 16th, 2020, I just want to talk a little bit about the corporate structure of the Boy Scouts, because I think that understanding their structure helps kind of understand the whole process and who's involved, and more importantly, who's not involved. So the Boy Scouts of America is a national organization. In fact, they're actually international. We have some clients who were abused while scouting in Europe.
Oh.
And so they are incorporated. They're currently headquartered in Texas. Underneath the national organization are a series of local councils. These councils are generally broken up by geographic region. So in some states, in New York, for example, in California, there's going to be more councils than in, Idaho, West Virginia. I don't know. I don't have the total number of councils off the top of my head. So I don't know how many councils there are in each state, so don't quiz me on that. But, you have those local councils, and their job is to, help kind of run the day-to-day operations of the troops. And so the troops are then beneath them. And the troops are what you think of when you say, oh, I'm in, Troop 34, Troop 105. Those are the Boy Scout troops. Those can be Cub Scout troops. And those are really the day-to-day goings-ons of the Boy Scouts. And so the immediate level of supervision is on those local councils, but like with any corporation, everything flows up from there. And every organization, it all flows up. So it all flows up to the Boy Scouts of America. So what happened is several states, New certainly have a good number of clients of Boy Scouts who are in their 60s and even in their 70s.
Oh, wow.
But so you may have, a Boy Scout who's 75 years old, and his time to file a lawsuit may have expired 40 years ago. But what this law does is it creates a window, 1-year window, which then allows them to bring a lawsuit. And so what happened was there was a flood of lawsuits that happened in New York. I don't have the exact numbers, but between New York, I know Texas had extended their statute of limitations. I believe California. There's a few other states. I believe New Jersey passed a law extending the statute of limitations. A bunch of states have done this, and there was just a flood of lawsuits. And so the Boy Scouts were essentially overwhelmed. And they said the best way that they thought to handle this, instead of fighting each case on its own and having to potentially pay out millions and billions of dollars in settlements, was to file for bankruptcy and to bring everything under the bankruptcy court. So they filed for bankruptcy in the in Delaware, and they filed for bankruptcy on February 18th of 2020. And the bankruptcy court, in working with the attorneys, created a sexual abuse claim form. It's a 12-page form, and that is the claim form. That process came out in May, and that has the deadline of, again, November 16th, 2020. Committed to memory. Now, the claim form itself has a lot of information, and it has everything from, the background information. It has all the information on the troop. There's some scouts that were involved, some clients that were involved in scouting for years and years. They started off as a Cub Scout, then they went to a Boy Scout, became an Eagle Scout. And so you have to have the troop information, the name of the abuser. In many cases, we've had clients where they are abused by multiple adults, and it's really horrible. And you have people that have been abused for years, and it's really, really terrible. But you need to include the names of everyone. There's some situations certainly where some of the survivors were very young, 10, 11 years old when they were abused. Sometimes they were abused when they were at a Boy Scout camp by a counselor, and maybe all they know is the first name, or they don't even know his name at all. And that's okay, as long as there can be some kind of information that can allow the courts to identify who this person is. So if they can provide a description of him, if they can provide as much context, if he was a counselor at a certain camp, the name of the camp, the year that they were at that camp, as much detail as possible, because the Boy Scouts have records of everything. They have records of, they have troop lists. So if you say, oh, I don't remember what troop I was in, but I was, a Boy Scout in, Houston, Texas, for example, and we used to meet over at the firehouse, in such and such area, they can look and they'll say, okay, well, then that means that the firehouse probably sponsored the troop, so let's look that up, and they're going to have records, and they say, okay, in this year, and they look on, they have the name of the troop, and they see, okay, so-and-so was in fact a member of that troop. So as much detail as can be provided. You want to provide information about who the other adults were that were in the troop or involved in the camp, if the abuse happened at a camp, because again, that'll help the courts to corroborate and substantiate the claim. Also, the most important part really is the nature of the abuse, and I recognize and we understand that this is often the most difficult part of the conversations for the clients. But it's obviously it's so critically important to provide as much detail as possible about what happened and how many times it happened. And then also we need to include information about how the abuse has impacted the person. And, that information, what we typically do is we like to have the client prepare a impact statement. And we find that for the client, that the process of actually preparing and writing an impact statement is in many ways a very cathartic process. You have to keep in mind that many of these people have kept this with them, and it's just been like buried, this experience, and how it's affected them has been ruminating with them for years and years and decades. And so this is their opportunity to really tell the Boy Scouts, say, hey, here's what happened to me, and here's how it's affected my life in all these different ways. All the ways that you would expect. We have so many clients that have addiction problems, difficulties with employment, with relationships, mental health problems, and many of our clients have told me that it's very empowering and cathartic to write this statement, and we work with them on it. We provide them guidance in terms of the different topics and things to address. Oftentimes, they'll send us a statement, and we'll help them edit it, clean it up a little bit, just so it's a little easier to read. And that's essentially what the claim process is and what's required. As of 2 weeks ago, the bankruptcy court has received 4,000 claims. So 4,000 claims have been filed as of 2 weeks ago.
That's in New York?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is that for New York?
No, that's for everywhere.
Okay. That was 2 weeks ago. Okay.
Yeah. So as of for everywhere, because the bankruptcy court, this claim process is open to everyone in the United States and even internationally. If people were in the Boy Scouts and were abused internationally, or if they live internationally now, they can still file a claim. And this claim, it covers anyone who was under 18 years old and was abused while in the Scouts.
Okay.
So, the information that's been provided to us is that as of 2 weeks ago, we get these periodic updates, and that was our last update. And there was approximately 4,000 claims that have been filed. We have been expecting that there's going to be between 10 and 20,000 claims. So that means really one of two things. Either there are just not as many claims as we thought, or there's a lot of pending claims out there that people just haven't filed yet, or there's going to be a mad rush over the next month.
Yeah, like you said, unfortunately, a lot of people are kind of like to contemplate on that. This is very traumatic, so they could have the PTSD, and they're sort of like going different directions about that. But I know that from the past, when I work with our victims of whether sexual abuse, domestic abuse, and they've mentioned that it is very therapeutical to write them down, sort of like releasing that from their brain on the paper per se. So I think that by you guys providing them like what categories to write about, that's perfect. And you also just now you answered one of my questions, what I was going to ask, like the criteria as for where they are, their residences are. So what you're saying, if I may reiterate, I think, correct me if I were wrong, it's if they were abused under the age of 18 at the time of the abuse, they would qualify regardless of where they are residing now. Is that correct?
Yes, and regardless of where the abuse occurred.
Okay, that's perfect.
Like I said, we have clients that were abused while partaking in the Boy Scouts in Italy, in Germany. So it's not just the United States.
Wow, this is like so terrible. You talked about, there are multiple abuses and multiple person that abuse the same victim. This is just, I am really glad that this Child Victims Act came about, and you guys are on the front to help all these people. So if you could, share with us like how people can contact you, phone number and information, and we're of course linked under the content section below, and we will be linking the previous interview as well regarding the information about what we talked about in the past, and this is a part 2 of our conversation. That will be great.
Sure. So, the best way to reach me is either just to give me a call. My direct number is 212-553-9152. Again, it's 212-553-9152. Or, you can go to our website. Our website is canadalaw.com. So it's C as in cat, A as in apple, N as in Nancy, N as in Nancy, A as in apple, T as in Thomas, A as in apple, L as in Larry, A as in apple, W as in win, .com. And they can submit a request for us to give them a call right through the website. I believe my email address is also, all my contact information is right on that website. So, either by phone, email, or through the website, we're pretty easy to get in touch with. And then, once all the claims are filed, because this is a question that we get very frequently from all of our clients. So they always want to know, okay, so after the claim is filed, what happens? So after the claims are filed, and the court has to still determine the assets that are available here. And that is going on right now, and that's being litigated right now. So the Boy Scouts of America have their own assets, right? They have real property, they have other types of property, vehicles, things like that. They have cash, and that's one source of assets. A second possible source of assets is insurance. Now, my understanding and what has been quoted to me is that there may be up to approximately $5 billion of insurance. However, the insurance companies have disclaimed coverage and are trying not to cover, which is a surprise to no one. And so there is litigation that's pending at the moment to determine whether or not the insurance companies have to cover. And, obviously it gets very complicated because this goes back in some cases 60, 70 years.
Yeah.
And so there's different insurance companies, there's different policies. It's a mess. But that is being litigated as we speak. How long it's going to take to resolve all of that, I truly don't know. There's also a third source of assets, and that's the local councils. So the local councils have a tremendous amount of assets. And in some states, in some cases where the local councils have been sued, those local councils, they're in negotiations now, they may contribute to this fund in order to resolve the lawsuits that are against them. So let me explain what I mean by that.
Okay.
So in New York, for example, when we filed lawsuits, we sued the Boy Scouts of America, the national organization, and we sued the local councils because the local councils were the ones who really did the day-to-day supervision of the troops.
Yes.
In our case, and in all of our cases, they're all older cases, and the actual individual troops don't exist anymore. So what happened is when the Boy Scouts of America filed for bankruptcy, that part of the case went to the bankruptcy court. However, the case against out in the bankruptcy court. But if those cases, if those local councils don't contribute to the bankruptcy court, and if they don't contribute to compensating those victims and those survivors of sexual abuse, then once the bankruptcy court proceeding against the Boy Scouts of America is done, those lawsuits are going to continue against the local councils. Obviously, the local councils don't want that. So that's why right now, there's negotiations between the attorneys that are handling the bankruptcy aspect of this, and there's negotiations to see if the local councils are going to contribute funds as well as part of this overall bankruptcy fund. And so the bottom line is, at this point, we truly have no idea how much available compensation is going to be, because it's still being litigated, it's still being negotiated. But once that is determined, and we don't have a timeline for when that's going to be, figured out. My hope is summer of 2021.
Okay.
But it could be much before that. It could be years. We truly don't know. Right. But once all of that is figured out, once they know, okay, this is how many claimants we have, and this is how much assets there's available, then the court is going to have to divide the matrix. And this is a matrix designed to compensate everyone fairly. What I say by fairly is they want to ensure that two survivors who suffered similar abuse and have had similar impacts on their lives will receive a similar amount of money, right? Because they want it to be fair. They want it to be consistent. They don't want to say, I think we can all agree that if someone was abused by 10 different adults in the Scouts over a period of 2 years, they should probably be compensated more than someone who was abused one time by one person. And that's not to minimize any kind of abuse on anyone, but I think that we can all, recognize that there's been different conduct and different things that happen to different people, and that everyone needs to be compensated fairly. And so they have to devise this matrix to figure out exactly how to do that. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. That makes sense. Just like what you said earlier, it's like, regardless how difficult it might be to describe the details, I think it is essential to provide the details in terms of especially, how many times that has occurred, and especially the impact statement that you guys are preparing. So whatever more details that the victims can provide, I believe that will give you more information to prepare the impact statement more accurately in order to get them the compensation that they truly deserved.
Sure, those are the two most important aspects of the whole claim, really. Obviously you need to. Obviously, it's important to identify, who it was who committed the abuse and when and where it happened. But the nature of the abuse, that's why we need as much details as possible, because that is going to have a big impact on the amount of compensation someone receives, and the effect that it has on that person's life. That's also going to have a major impact on how much compensation they receive. So, sometimes, for example, we'll get, and that's part of the reason why we want the impact statements from the clients. It's not required. There's actually a series of boxes that people can check where they don't have to provide a narrative at all. But we want the court to read something that's in their own words, right? We want someone to be able to say in their words what happened to them and how it's affected them, because we believe that that is going to allow them to receive the maximum compensation possible. And sometimes we receive, we'll get a statement and it's like a paragraph long and it's like very, very, very broad and general. And then we'll have to go back and we work with them and we say, okay, let's see if we can beef this up a bit, and we talk about all the different ways. I mean, I received training and I've been, I'm very well versed and educated on the impact of trauma and sexual abuse.
Yes.
And how that affects adults when children are abused, and how that affects people at various stages of their life. So I'll bring a lot of these things up, and I'll say, okay, well, often abuse affects people in this way or that way. Have any of those things happened to you in your life? And a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, like that happens, or like I've never been able to keep a job for more than like a few months, or
or trust issues. A lot of
most
people
of our
have.
clients are divorced, if ever married.
Yes.
And a lot of times when they really start exploring and thinking about all these things, they realize that a lot of these issues, all kind of come back to when they were abused.
Absolutely, yeah. These I'm really, on one hand, it's so sad and it's terrible to hear like how and what those victims have to go through. But on the other hand, I feel relieved to have you. If you go to our previous episode, we had a survivor and we talked about trying to find a provider who is trauma informed. It is so difficult. People just simply do not. It's not like people don't have the empathy. They just don't know. They're not trauma informed. So I am so glad that you had years of experience and especially, the empathy to help people. I really appreciate what you do.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and that really started for me. I mean, I was a prosecutor before I went into private practice. I was a prosecutor at the Manhattan DA's office, and I was there for over 7 years. And I worked with and interacted with thousands of people who've been the survivors of some sort of trauma. And the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has also done and still does an incredible job in terms of training prosecutors. And they receive really top-notch training in abuse, how abuse affects people, the different ways that it impacts people, and how to talk to people. A lot of times terminology matters a lot, and not everyone realizes that. And it seems like a little thing that a lot of people wouldn't think matters, but how a certain situation is phrased, or how someone is spoken to, or how the experience that someone has gone through, how that's characterized, matters so much.
Yeah, the triggers. Like you can say about a certain word that may mean nothing to me, but if just so happened the victim has experienced some, with the abuser, and at that occasion that word was mentioned, that could be a trigger. Or a certain song, a noise. People easily get startled because of things that happen to them. And you talked about relationship issue. I think one of the major reasons or causes of them is also the trust issue. And unfortunately, a lot of them, who get abused as a child, they might get into unfortunately prostitution, and even worse, sex trafficking, because they never really feel the love and feel that they can have someone to trust, and they get confused. So there's so much impact that has really just messed people up. I feel so bad about it, and once again, I'm so glad that this act come about, and you are here to help people. So yeah, definitely, if you guys did not hear the beginning of the part, we are having the deadline of November the 16th, 2020, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Absolutely deadline, and not the deadline for you to send it out, but the deadline for this to be received. And remember, there's 12 pages of form. Even the attorney need to take time to work on that. So make sure don't wait until last time to do that, because you truly really need to get that out in order to get the compensation that you truly deserve. And also the phone number for Mr. Canada is area code 212-553-9152. We will also link that at the content section below. And as mentioned, this is part 2 of the Boy Scout of America claim. We will be linking the part 1 in the content section below as well. If you think this message is helpful to you, or you think you know of someone who might be able to use this one, make sure that you share this and subscribe this so that more people can get the information and what they needed. Lastly, if you want to be on the show, and if you are a victim and a survivor, you may email us at MsUSATexas@gmail, which is msusatexas@gmail.com, or you can contact us on Facebook with the same handle name, MsUSA Texas. But thank you so much, Mr. Canada. I know that you're doing a great job, and I have confidence in you to getting, the whatever the compensation that our victim will deserve. And if they have any questions, they can contact you directly. If for any reason they contact us, we will for sure to forward those leads to you guys as well. But thank you again for your time and for the hard work to help our victims and survivors.
You're welcome. I'm happy to help, and again, thank you also for all the hard work that you do as well. And thank you for having me on here. I appreciate that we were able to take this chance and this opportunity to have a second conversation.
Certainly. So we'll be in touch with you again soon. Thank you. You have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Same to you.